Have you ever felt like an outsider in your own neighborhood, just because of who you are? Have you witnessed or experienced racial profiling? If so, drop a comment below and share your story, because this is something that happens far too often. The sun was setting behind the perfectly manicured hedges of Oak Ridge Estates when I saw a moment that would become the talk of our community for months and forever change the way we functioned. It was Marcus Thompson, a 15-year-old with a bright smile and even brighter future, walking home from his study group at the local library. His backpack hung over one shoulder, his hoodie pulled up to shield him from the evening chill. He was nodding to whatever was playing through his earbuds, just another teenager heading home after a productive night preparing for his advanced placement exams. Marcus was the kind of kid parents dreamed of having. A straight-A student, a junior varsity basketball player, and a volunteer at the local animal shelter on weekends. But none of this mattered to Susan Whitfield, the president of our homeowners association. To her, Marcus was a threat, an outsider who didn't belong, someone who needed to be dealt with before the safety of our precious gated community was compromised. I watched from my front porch as Susan's white Tesla slowed to a crawl beside Marcus. She rolled down her window, her perfectly highlighted bob catching the golden hour light. From where I stood, I couldn't hear what she was saying, but her body language told the whole story, pointing fingers, stern face, the universal posture of unwarranted authority being exercised with smug satisfaction. Marcus stopped walking, removed his earbuds, and stood still, his shoulders visibly tensing. Even from a distance, I could see the shift in his demeanor, a transformation from a relaxed teenager to a cautious young black man being confronted. It was a change no 15-year-old should ever have to make. Yet it was one too many black children learn as a survival skill. This wasn't the first time I'd seen Susan patrol our neighborhood. Her white Tesla was a common sight, cruising slowly past houses, noting HOA violations with almost gleeful efficiency, grass too tall, holiday decorations left up a day past the allowed period. But this was the first time I'd seen her actually stop someone. "Excuse me, young man." Susan's voice carried across the quiet street as she stepped out of her car, designer purse clutched tightly under her arm like she was in downtown, not our sleepy suburb. "Do you have a reason to be in this neighborhood?" Marcus' reply was too quiet for me to hear, but I saw him gesture toward the row of houses just beyond the park where several new families had recently moved in. "I'm going to need more than that," Susan said, her voice growing louder, as though increasing her volume could increase her authority. "This is a private community. I don't recognize you, and I know everyone who lives here." I put down my coffee mug and began walking toward them. Something didn't feel right. Years of nursing had taught me to trust my instincts when a situation was turning dangerous. By the time I got within earshot, Susan had her phone out, manicured finger hovering over the screen. "I live here," Marcus said, his voice steady but strained, the practiced patience of someone who'd had to explain himself too many times before. "My family moved in 3 months ago. 1542, Maple Court, the blue house with the basketball hoop in the driveway." "No, you don't." Susan's denial came immediately, dripping with condescension. "I know everyone who lives here, especially on Maple Court." "I'm just trying to go home," Marcus insisted, his voice cracking slightly. "Please just let me walk to my house. You can follow me there if you want to verify." "This isn't up for debate," Susan said, raising her phone higher like a weapon. "I'm calling the police." That was when Marcus pulled out his own phone. A smart kid, clearly prepared for this kind of situation, a fact that made my heart ache with its implications. "I'm recording this," he said, calmly activating his camera. "And I'm calling my father." Susan laughed, a short, dismissive sound, conveying both amusement and threat. "Go ahead, call whoever you want. Meanwhile, I'm calling 911 because there's a suspicious person refusing to leave private property." I couldn't stay silent anymore. "Susan," I called, approaching them with purposeful strides. "What's going on here?" She turned to me, momentary relief washing over her face at seeing another white resident. Her expression assumed allyship, but it made my stomach churn. "Rachel, thank goodness," Susan said. "This young man is trespassing and he won't leave. I've asked him nicely, but he keeps insisting he lives here. Can you believe it?" "I'm not trespassing," Marcus insisted, his voice remarkably composed. "I live here with my parents. We moved in 3 months ago, 1542, Maple Court, the blue house with the basketball hoop. Susan turned to me with raised eyebrows and theatrical disbelief. Have you ever seen him before? Does he look familiar to you? I hesitated. Truthfully, I hadn't. Our community was large, over 200 homes spread across several streets, and I worked long hours as a nurse, often on night shifts that left me sleeping when most neighbors were active. But I knew one thing. Susan's behavior was wrong, fundamentally wrong. Susan, does it matter if I've seen him? I replied, crossing my arms. He says he lives here. He's given you his exact address. Why don't we? I'm calling the police, she interrupted, already dialing, her thumb moving with practiced ease. This has gone on long enough. We can't be too careful these days. Marcus' phone rang too. He had it on speaker. His calm facade cracked slightly as he waited for the call to connect. Dad, he said, his voice betraying his youth and fear. Can you come home? I'm being stopped from walking to our house by a lady saying I don't live here. She's calling the police on me. The conversation continued, and as more neighbors emerged from their homes, the situation began to escalate. Susan stood with her back straight, phone to her ear as if performing for her growing audience. Yes, I'd like to report a suspicious person in Oak Ridge Estates, she said into her phone with exaggerated articulation. Young black male, wearing a hoodie, refusing to leave when asked. No, he's not armed, but he's being confrontational. By now, a few more neighbors had gathered, curious about the commotion. Mrs. Chun from 3 doors down, the Martinez family from across the street, even Mr. Peterson with his cane. Everyone was watching. This is ridiculous, I said more firmly, stepping closer to Marcus in what I hoped was a gesture of solidarity. You can't just stop people because you don't recognize them. I'm the HOA president, Susan snapped back, covering the phone's microphone briefly. It's my responsibility to keep this community safe. We've had break-ins in the area. From teenagers walking home. I challenged, disgust clear in my voice. Marcus stood perfectly still, his phone still recording, his other hand still on the call with his father. His expression was a mask of forced calm, but his eyes betrayed him fear, anger, humiliation, resignation, all simmering beneath the surface. 10 minutes later, the first police cruiser arrived. Susan straightened her blazer in preparation to meet the officers with the confidence of someone who'd never had reason to fear law enforcement. But what happened next caught everyone by surprise. As the first officer stepped out, another car pulled UPA supervisor's vehicle with distinct markings. The man who emerged wore the insignia of a captain and had the same warm brown skin as Marcus. Marcus, Captain James Thompson called out, his deep voice carrying. He surveyed the scene before making direct eye contact with his son. You okay, son? Susan's head whipped around, her mouth falling open. Her face drained of color. Dad, Marcus' voice cracked slightly, a tremor of relief in it. I was just walking home from study group. Captain Thompson nodded, placing a reassuring hand on Marcus' shoulder before turning to Susan, whose self-importance had deflated. Ma'am, Captain Thompson said with calm authority, I understand you called the police about a suspicious person in your neighborhood. Susan's face transformed, and she stumbled over her words. There's been a misunderstanding. I was just... Captain Thompson didn't let her continue. We have protocols for this. I'm Captain James Thompson, and I believe you've met my son, Marcus. The officer nodded at Susan. Didn't realize this was your residence. Captain Thompson continued, his voice steady. My son was walking home from his study group when he was stopped by this lady who proceeded to call 911 on him for being suspicious. Marcus held up his phone. I recorded everything, he said. The crowd was silent now. Even Susan had lost her composure. She stammered her defenses, but it didn't matter anymore. The truth was out. Someone in the crowd said plainly, it's because he's black. And just like that, the air was thick with a realization that none of us could deny. Susan, cornered, sputtered, but it was too late. The community had seen through the veil of suspicion, and it was clear that this wasn't just an isolated incident. It was a pattern. Months later, Oak Ridge Estates began to change. It became a place where neighbors truly knew each other. Regular community gatherings, shared cultural events, and a new HOA leadership brought diversity and inclusion to the forefront. Even Susan, who had once wielded her position like a weapon, had grown. She now volunteered with a community outreach program, working to bridge the gap between law enforcement and neighborhoods. And Marcus? He was going to Stanford on a full scholarship, the entire neighborhood celebrating his success. That's the thing about community STRE, not just streets and houses. They're people. And people can change.